It's 6 p.m. Tuesday, November 8th, 2022. This is the Board of Public Works meeting for the City of Franklin. We'll do a quick call to order and, roll call and Pledge of Allegiance. Myself, Chairman Webster, Commissioner Woznicki.
Here.
Commissioner Witt.
Here.
City Engineer Morrow.
Here.
Assistant City Engineer Beidnick.
Here.
Highway Superintendent Schlater.
Here.
Alderman Nelson and Commissioner Skaronsky are not present. We'll do Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, we're going to start with the reading and approval of the minutes for the September 13th meeting.
I looked them over, I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay, Commissioner Porter. Is there?
To approve.
Okay, Commissioner Porter. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Commissioner Witt. Are there any additions, comments, questions from anybody? All of those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Not hearing any negatives, that motion will pass to accept as presented. What is going on? Gotta stop that. Try that. We'll do a public comment period. I know that a lot of the three individuals here are here for a specific item. And you'll be allowed to speak at that time. This is generally for items that are not on the agenda for this evening. So, but if you have any other comments to bring up, things that you aren't aware of and want the city to be up, things that you aren't aware of and want the city to be aware of, this is the opportunity. Bless you. Not hearing from anybody, we'll declare the public comment period closed at 6:04. And I am going to take out of order here. The three individuals here are for the new business item 5A, which is the Hilltop 15-mile, the 15-mile-per-hour speed limit on Hilltop Lane curve at 41st Street. There was some information in the packet here, or on our desks here tonight as we walked in. This is an area that we have in the past conversations about from residents. You know, can we put stop signs? Can we do anything? And it's always kind of been said no to in the past. So we'll have to see what's new here tonight. Glenn, you want to start?
Let me, I guess, should I welcome to?
Yeah, do you want to start and fill us
Sure,
in,
sure.
and then we'll let you all speak?
Yeah, we
Okay.
had a, I don't want to say petition, but we had requests regarding Hilltop Lane and 42nd Street area. Conversation was, I guess, 41st Street specifically is what the concern was, I guess, 41st Street specifically is what the concern was. I understand at one time that there may have been some white signs with black letters and basically 15-mile-an-hour signs posted. Those went away, and there's some caution curve signs, but for the most part, there's no signs. So the request was, can they go back to putting the 15-mile-an-hour speed limit signs
For the curve.
as they were curved? So I will.
Just so I can correct a comment that I made earlier.
Okay.
I said that this was an area that we looked at. I take that, this was talking about that curve in particular. We had looked previously going down Hilltop towards 51st, not that particular corner. Okay?
So, and Alderwoman asked, why, so forth, and how to explain it. So I pulled up her email, because I think, I don't want to pat myself on the back, but I think I explained
I'm gonna make one more comment because I'm an idiot. Alderman Hanneman is also here, and I apologize
No worries.
for not recognizing, but I've never met you before. So for the record,
Well,
it
and for the
shows.
record, I'm very sorry to say that I haven't visited your meeting before, so.
I'm trying, I just signed the thing about not being offending and so on. Okay, thank you, class.
So,
But I haven't signed.
we're all offended, right?
All good.
So I tried to make the point, there's what are called black and white signs, or the regulatory signs. So those are signs that a police officer can enforce. And it has, by having a black and white sign, that means if you look in our municipal code, let's see if there's actually 245-2, 245-3, and so forth. So if you jump to this section, it basically lists, basically everyone has this, basically everyone has this, every street has a default miles per hour, unless it's otherwise designated here, and it has to be posted for a police officer to write the ticket. So the question is, what happened to the 15-mile-an-hour signs? I don't know how long ago they disappeared, but apparently they've been gone for. I don't know how long ago they disappeared, but apparently they've been gone for some time. And I would suggest to you that they are not in the municipal code, so therefore we cannot enforce it. That's why they would have been taken down. I've only been here 8 years. I'll never.
I don't have any recollection. I've been around a few years.
Okay, so anyway, so the thought is, could we at least have some discussion here lately about non-regulatory signs and like the
Well-
Animal Crossing signs and such.
Okay,
And
I'm going to go over here for just a minute and let you speak, but I'm going to make a comment
Okay.
first. If you put back up the picture of the area in question here.
Yeah.
It sounds to me that we have two questions here kind of in front of the board based on what you just said. Well, actually, we have three options. One is do nothing. In terms of the two signs, it doesn't matter which sign we put in. It doesn't matter which sign we put in, whether it be the black and white signs or the curve with the miles per hour sign.
so I'm going to explain.
I'm very confused.
That's what I'm trying to explain. So yeah, if you would, so again, the black and white signs, if you would, so again, the black and white signs are regulatory signs. Those are signs that either by default, every street should be, and it has to be posted. And if we do something different, and I just sat through a seminar the other day that talks about how you establish speed limits and so forth, and the procedure for doing so. So we can reduce under certain circumstances and if it meets certain criteria. So that's a regulatory sign. That's what a police officer can write a ticket. That's you must do kind of thing. There are signs, and we typically don't use these much anymore in the city. So it's the non-regulatory signs, which are the yellow signs, and in the case here, we'd be 15 or whatever. We generally don't use those anymore because it's somewhat confusing to the public. They say, well, there's a speed limit right there. Well, it's not really a speed limit. It's an advisory speed. So you typically see those on the interstate off-ramps, because if you have a sport, maybe you have a sporty car and you can zip around. Maybe you have a sporty car and you can zip around a curve and no problem at all at the regulatory speed and be just fine. However, if you're driving a big semi loaded, top heavy or whatever, and you try to take that curve anything higher than the recommended speed on the advisory speed, you might tip over. So this is there to kind of warn you the speed you might tip over. So this is there to kind of warn you, but a police officer cannot write a ticket on that unless they feel that you're driving unsafely in the area. And having said that, they could write you a ticket anywhere for any time if they feel like you're driving unsafely.
Okay.
So we tend to, in the city, we use just the arrows without the associates. So that's kind of a difference. Good question, because a lot of people have that. What's the difference between the white signs and the yellow signs? That's kind of why they're there. So if indeed this curve had the 15-mile-an-hour white signs at one time, they're not called out in our city ordinance. So we would have to actually adopt the city ordinance now for us to be able to enforce it. So that's hopefully explains the difference.
That does. Thank you.
Yes.
Glenn, I just happened
Commissioner
to,
Specht.
I was just familiarizing myself with the signs in this area, and I happened to bring up Street View from 11 years ago. And that appears to be what was up.
So she is showing a yellow sign, again, it's yellow, so it's advisory, and it's got the 15 on it. So it doesn't even,
Curve.
Can I,
and it says curve.
Just a minute. Yeah, go ahead.
So, and that's a good idea. I wasn't able, I'd looked, I wasn't able to find it, so appreciate you bringing this. That's a good idea. I wasn't able, I'd looked, I wasn't able to find it, so appreciate you bringing this and finding it. So what she's showing here on her phone is a yellow sign. It's not the diamond shape, but it's just a rectangle shape. It says curve at the top and has 15. So by being a yellow curve, that would be an advisory curve. It's not a required curve. So,
Okay,
okay,
thank you.
all right.
How do I, what I do need is name and address for the record. And then if you want, you raised your hand, so I'll let you go first, and then the rest can fill
Yeah, put
in.
this over.
my name is Dennis Cowan. I live at 4230. This is my wife Janice. We've lived there for 29 years.
Okay, now which one is your house then on the map? Could you show us real quick so the members of the board here are aware as to which house you are? 4229, you're there. Okay,
Right there.
thank you, sir.
Yes, 36 West Hilltop Lane.
Okay, thank you.
And what she said was right. The sign was yellow with the suggested speed, 15 miles an hour, up to, I can't tell you when, but all of a sudden it disappeared. So you get the white with black letter signs so that the speed limit of 15 miles an hour can be enforced. Because we've had innumerable situations where people are coming down Hilltop Lane, most of the part from the west. So when you look here, you got 44th Street, okay, here's 42nd. This is like uphill. As you go west from here, it's uphill. By the time, uphill, as you go west from here, it's uphill. By the time a car or truck gets to this point, they are really flying. I mean, it's terrible. I have seen, the other day, as an example, I was out raking some leaves. A motorcycle came from here so fast it was a blur. I mean, it's just horrible. We've got one resident on this side of the street that was almost hit by a car 2 weeks ago. We've had situations where two of them, which were relayed to me, that on 2 different occasions, they came around,
I zoomed out for you.
okay, they came down here so darn fast, tried to make the turn on 44th, and knocked over the stop sign. 2 different occasions. We've got what has changed in the last 2-3 years. There's a lot of children. There's children on bikes. Okay, now you might say, well, there's a sidewalk over here. No. There's children on bikes. We've got adults that walk their dogs up and down the street. Adults that walk their dogs up and down the street. One woman has 2 collies, and it just goes on and on. People on bicycles, people jogging, and you've got people, and I can't tell you how fast these cars are going.
Sure,
But I can't tell you how fast these cars are going.
sure.
But I've had one instance where cars were drag racing down and past my house, and I'll bet you they were going 80 miles an hour. Now, we've called the police several times. We've called the police several times, and I'm not here to badmouth anybody, but we've called the police, and this past, I believe it was August, somebody came racing down the street, and the police officer came to the house, and I said to her, why can't you back your police car or truck up into the side street here, maybe an unmarked car, and start clocking these people. And here's when the worst thing, between 6:30 and 8, just like clockwork. If I was to call the police, the non-emergency number, I could call every day. And I'm up at that time because I have things to do with my grandchildren. The other time that's absolutely horrible is when the high school lets out. And I'm talking between 2:30, cars come down that street, I'd say at 50 miles an hour. Now, we also have, the school buses are out here. Some of the children, when the school bus pulls up, here, but the children have to cross the street before the school bus comes from this house, and wait on this side of the street, and then go to this side to get on the school bus. Now, I've talked to all of these people that have children, and they're very concerned. One guy said to me, he's just lived in the neighborhood for 2-3 months. I said, what do you do with your kids when they see the cars come? He said, I tell them to dive behind the bushes, and then he laughed. But it's very, very serious. So, our request is to put the speed limit signs up, and then something that is an ongoing requesting, stop signs, 3-way stop signs here and here. So that, and I know that people don't always stop, but if we have the speed limit and the stop signs, I think it's going to be a big help, because I know that haven't been filled, so we need all the help we can get.
Oh, all right, thank you. I am Sherry Hanneman, 3926 Maple Crest Drive, the alderman for the 4th District. We're here to support their request, and also on behalf of several residents who could not be here tonight. They've done a good job of talking with some of the other residents that live along Hilltop Lane, and some of them I know have written some emails out of town, so you might not have those in front of you. But this is a concern. I go through here probably a couple times a day because I live up 42nd and then to the right. Especially, as he says, during the after school times when the high school lets out, the kids really I know speed is an issue everywhere. As an older person, that's the number one complaint I get calls about, is speeding in neighborhoods. And I talk with the police chief. They do what they can do. Sometimes they put up the little flashing speeds. Or even if we could just get at the very least, the advisory sign back, put a little spinner on the top of it, calling the attention. I don't know. That's why we've brought it here to you to review. One of the questions that pops into my head is there a standard radius for which you would of a curve that you would have to regulate the speed for? I don't know the answer to that, and is that something that's kind of standard across the city? So I would ask that we find a way to help mitigate some of these issues. I'd ask that we find a way to help mitigate some of these issues for this neighborhood, because it is an issue. People do come whizzing down Hilltop Lane. I've got school board members that complain to me about it, and I get it. It's hard to control people. So thank you.
If I may, for tonight, we can deal with the curve at 41st, because that's what's on our agenda. I can request to have it come back to investigate the stop signs, because we really can't do that since it wasn't on the agenda. But let's talk about the curve. Kevin, you were nodding your head on the curb signs. You have a recollection of this?
Yeah, they were taken down and replaced with the curved arrow.
With the curved arrow, do you remember when and why?
It's been
Yeah, you're like me.
years, but
You're like me.
yeah.
It was probably at
It was no longer ago than 11 years ago.
I'm gonna make a guess that it was probably, you know, at different times we've tried to, consolidate the types of signs that we've had in the area, and that was probably when that occurred. That's my thought.
And we still are.
And we still are, yeah, signs are a big issue, and I don't know if signs are a big issue, and I don't know if you are aware, we actually have a stop sign, in terms of the stop signs, we have a warrant requirement that this board created and the engineering department uses in their recommendations. The engineering department uses in their recommendations for the stop signs. So anything in terms of stop signs will go through that warrant process to determine, and before it comes back to us. So there's actually something behind that, and Alderman, I'm sure you've seen that previously. There's something behind that, and Alderman, I'm sure you've seen that previously. Yeah, so. Commissioner Porter, go ahead.
Thank you. It's probably an obvious question, but the speed limit in that area should be, and I'm thinking it's in the, and all the other stuff aside, the situation, and it's not that I don't believe the people in the neighborhood, it should be real easy for the police to start citing people, because it's clearly over 25 miles an hour. So I mean, even the current speed limit would be enough to start, if enforced, ask every directive.
So as I always tell folks, police department is really pretty good about going out and looking if you can tell them when and how to fish. You know, you can say every afternoon at 3 o'clock a red Chevy pickup truck comes through, da 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 da, and granted, truck comes through, da 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 da, and granted they're stretched to the limit, but my experience has been that they're usually send a squad car out to maybe fish for that red Chevy pick. I always use that because I've got a red Chevy pickup truck. that they could go out and, you know, at 3:15 every day they could look for that red Chevy pickup. Could go out and, you know, at 3:15 every day they could look for that red Chevy pickup truck that comes flying across there. I don't doubt at all that somebody might be driving. 80 seems a little extreme, but 50 and more. But I guess I would submit to you that if they're driving 50 and 80 miles per hour, well beyond 25, won't mean a thing. And that's something I just went to a seminar the other day, and I passed out a document that I can talk about later. But bottom line is signage is really doesn't do squat. It's just fact is, you know, we put the spinners on top of sign here. You know, the flashing, you are going this fast, it works for a little while, but then people get used to it and realize that there's no consequence, and then the speeds go right back up. Study after study have shown signage is not the answer. So we're trying to do some things. Obviously, there's some very expensive things. You can, you know, build your roads differently to make it tough to navigate. We've talked about maybe doing some weird striping that makes it look like you're going faster than you really are. But I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not saying that people aren't speeding through there, but I just simply don't believe that signage is going to, people aren't speeding through there, but I just simply don't believe that signage is going to make a diddly bit of difference. It's just because people realize how fast they're going, they just don't care.
Well, our other question is, and we've asked this to the police department, so when they're coming from the west down Hilltop Lane, why can't they sit going north there on 42nd Street? So as they're coming down, they're going to come right by you. And we've asked a police officer some time ago. Instead, they sit right out in the open and right on Hilltop Lane as they can. So, but this officer said to us, well, we have to be out in the open. Well, when we're always driving, we don't always pass police cars. They can be sitting off. If you ever go down that little H off of Ryan Road, there's a little cut out there. They sit out there. You don't have to be sitting on the same road that you're driving on. And so many times, and many of us think this, why can't they just sit there on 42nd Street, they'll come flying right by them and out they come and they get them. But they sit right there on Hilltop Lane and they'll have their lights on, you know, and it's just like, well, lights on, you know, and it's just like, well,
Yeah.
yeah, you know, that they, you know, but then again, of course, the people will see, oh, there's an officer there. So you would hope if that's done enough, people will say, oh boy, they're sitting out here, we have to watch it. So you don't always, boy, they're sitting out here, we have to watch it. So you don't always have to be hidden, but you wish some of the time.
So I can tell you part of the rule is this the diagram you see right here that they talked about. So you have to be careful. It's the angle that you're actually trying to measure something that's speeding by you. So, you know, it's obviously trying to measure something that's speeding by you. So, you know, it's obviously if I'm looking straight at you and I have a good speed gun. But if I'm sitting way off to the side, if they're sitting way back up there, they really can't get a good angle on the gun to be able to judge how fast they're going. Having said that, I still say that even if someone were driving the speed limit, if they're unsafe, if they're in the speed limit, if they're unsafe, if they barely, you know, if they're not paying attention and they sideswipe somebody walking the dog or whatever, you can still be ticketed even if you're driving under the speed limit. There are many reasons. You have to drive safely no matter what the speed limit is. So.
Can I just interject something? Talk to virtually everybody. Why don't they put the stop signs up? The three-way stops on,
Well, we're gonna come back to that. We can't do anything about that since it's not on our agenda for
want us
this
to come
evening.
back to the.
No, you certainly can at that point, but it has to come back and it has to be on the agenda and published. Right. Commissioner Specht.
Thank you. I also do live in that neighborhood and I run that street on a regular basis, and so I can understand what these residents are concerned about. To Glenn's point, with being an engineer myself, I totally agree that changing in signage without solutions, especially on that run of Hilltop, where you don't have stop signs, but over the very top of that hill, right as you go over the crest, there should be one right there at that intersection. And then there's really nothing until you get to Ryan. I would be interested in stop signs through that stretch, maybe not necessarily at that intersection, like, because there's a four-way
There's a
intersection.
four-way at, what is it,
That may be
40,
more appropriate,
44th?
which would meet our warrants.
Right, for-
That would
there's
still
four
slow
ways.
down traffic coming down that hill.
It's, yeah,
So
three
here's,
sides.
okay, so rule one, request you to come, engineering to come back. Can you put back up the
Ariel?
aerial? Yeah, there you go. So I think what I would like to see is to come back, Glenn, with a 7th, okay, up there?
Talking about 42nd,
No, I'm talking about the
47.
four-way up on top first.
47.
That's right after the crest,
Glenn,
is
can
that
you-
correct?
Could you pass it, just, thank
That's-
you. Oh, no,
is-
that
is-
is where it
They've
currently
already got a
is
stop
at.
sign.
There are,
It's
That one's already got
47th
one.
Where there
Yeah,
is a
that's-
four.
there
Okay,
is an
so-
intersection, so there isn't on,
It's
That one's already got
47th
one.
Where there
Yeah,
is a
that's-
four.
Okay,
there is an
so-
intersection, so there isn't on the four-way.
Yeah, there is
Yeah.
a
There is a
four-way.
four-way there.
There is a four-way there,
Yeah.
okay.
So we would have
I'm
to
trying to
look-
recall this.
Okay.
Okay, I would,
The
in
one,
terms of meeting our requirements, I think meeting our requirements, I think is it 44th coming from the south?
This road here.
Yes, so 44th, and I think
It's
42nd,
That's
and maybe Thorncrest, but I don't know if you have problems coming from the other, and maybe Thorncrest, but I don't know if you have problems coming from the other direction. But I don't know if you do have troubles.
I don't know either because
So,
I'm not over there.
but what I would like to suggest, so maybe those 3-4 stop signs, take a look at those.
I live right over there.
Okay.
I drive that
Alderman
street
Fire-
twice. I live right over there.
Okay.
I drive that
Alderman
street
Fire-
twice a
Commissioner.
day at minimum.
Mhm.
And I don't think a speed limit's gonna do anything. They're not obeying the 25, they're not gonna obey the 14. Possibly stop signs, but I don't see any trouble on 41st. But people drive up my street, McGinnis, fact, and,
So-
then.
This is, so from a request standpoint, from Thorncrest through 44th on Hilltop, I'd like the evaluation of the stop signs at those
Say it again,
locations.
from where to where?
On Hilltop
Yeah,
and 41st, that. where it turns.
41st, 42nd,
42nd and Hilltop and 44th and Hilltop. Those, just let's evaluate those three from a stop sign perspective to
so
start.
I will, at full disclosure, I mean, I'll do a full
I-
warrant,
A
but,
full warrant, that's what we need, you
but,
know,
but stop signs are not to be used for slowing traffic,
exactly,
slowing traffic.
exactly, that's what I was going to say. One of the warrants is to remember, stop signs are not to slow traffic down, they're to control the intersections. And that's where we have difficulties with this type of a neighborhood and this type of a, you know, a three-way stop. Type of a neighborhood and this type of a, you know, a three-way stop, getting them approved on the warrant perspective. Okay, so now I'll just forewarn you that even though we're checking for the warrants, that's kind of the biggest issue. I would, Glenn, also request, can we do with your review, if you could request from the police department, you know, records that they have in terms of
On speed.
on speed or
complaints.
accidents or complaints, it would also help your warrant perspective.
Sure.
And then, in terms of what we have here tonight, okay, Commissioner Porter, go ahead.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, go ahead.
Is this a candidate for a speed bump? Is that a possibility in here?
So, if you recall, we had a long conversation regarding
While
speed
back.
tables, speed humps and such. I can tell you communities that, as a refresher, communities that have implemented them absolutely hate them.
Okay.
Most people that actually ask for them and get them are sorry that they ask for them, because now they hear the actually ask for them and get them are sorry that they ask for them, because now they hear the all day
okay.
long.
And it destroys your car.
It just yeah, and I guess that's probably not the reason why you wouldn't put one in, because that's the idea, you're supposed to slow them down.
Let's slow down, right?
But the other thing it does is you get people now they have to make up time, so they slow down the over bump,
And then
and then you know they ramp
Okay.
up to get past it. So by and large, and I'm interested to see what happens in Milwaukee with the new mayor this past year that said we're going to start putting these in there where I can tell you staff is pulling their hair out. Like, he doesn't know what he's asking for, because people do them. They do
And-
exist, but it's
And
kind of-
just so you are aware, one of the reasons that three-ways do not hold up for stop signs very well is the same comment as for speed bumps, where they speed up right away because they lost time, they want to make it up. They do this losing time. People have a belief, they don't know that there shouldn't be a stop sign here, so they'll hit the gas.
I will
And-
do a full warrant just so.
However,
If you have a stop sign, three-way stop at 42nd, 44th, and then up on 46th, and uses some common sense, they're not gonna make up any time by flooring it to the next stop sign.
Well, but a third stop sign, they ain't gonna stop, because they're gonna be mad.
That's what
They'll be
happens
mad.
at Hughes and 35th, unfortunately.
It happens in where I live on,
Yeah.
I mean,
We have neighborhoods, one of the system, at one time, this goes back to when I've been on this board since like 91, okay? So at one time, going way back, every alderman had 2 or 3 stop signs that they could put up a year. And you can see in areas, I'll point one very close by here, and I'm sure you're aware of it, right around Southwood Glen. I'll point one very close by here, and I'm sure you're aware of it, right around Southwood Glen. There's stop signs every corner, and the people in the area, you know, at least, they didn't like them, but they kept asking for them, and the aldermen would put them up because they were given the power to do so at that time. One of the reasons that came to this board was to kind of put some order to why stop signs are applied and where they're applied. So that's,
Mr. Chairman, I would also suggest that's why the DOT and Federal Highway is being very insistent, because historically, people established the speed.
Commissioner Witt.
In your side, you have sidewalks up and down the side of the roads, right?
Just
One side.
Only one
One
side of the
side.
street.
Okay, what I noticed too is like, even like where nobody walks on sidewalks anymore.
That's right.
Why do we build them?
I don't know.
You know, they got dogs and
Well, and
whatever.
that's one of the problems, because you got so many
No.
away from the dogs, so they go on the other side of the
They
street.
go on the roads and they,
Yeah,
you know, I don't understand that at all, you know?
yeah, no. that's
Commissioner
why.
Speck.
Being an avid user of that street, I can tell you, because it's only on one side, you constantly have people crossing over.
Well, I'm sure you-
One side. You constantly have people crossing over.
Well, I'm sure you do.
Which, even at that, just having to cross over to get to somewhere that's safe to walk or run, you have to cross the street.
And you have to cross the street to get to your mailbox. in
Well,
some cases.
that's,
Well, across the street to get to your mailbox. in
well,
some cases.
that's,
Well,
the mail company, they say it's gonna be a one side only, they're not gonna go every other
Right,
side.
but that's the point, is that
Right.
it becomes a safety issue, and
Yeah.
no matter what we do.
So let's go back then to the issue at here. So we've got the things for the future talked about. In terms of, Glenn, is there in the National Highway Traffic Safety Code and recommendations, is there anything on horizontal curve versus speed? And
So-
radius?
So there are design, it's not, I mean, some curves are banked, some aren't, some are curved and what have you. So there are charts and so forth it takes some effort to look at. And that is part of the engineering study for a speed.
Okay.
We can lower it down to 15 if we should allow. Anything less than that would require DOT. If we should allow, anything less than that would require DOT approval.
Okay, I would guess I would include that in the request for next month, because, but in terms of tonight, what we have in front of us, we really have two options, or three, like I said, we can do nothing. Two options, or three, like I said, we can do nothing. We can request to put back up the signs, the advisory signs with a speed limit on there, or just a curb sign, one way or the other. Or we can put a request through that has to get approved by council to do something on speed. So what would your recommendation, I didn't see a recommendation,
No,
at this
no,
point in
there's no
time.
recommendation, other than basically I said no. I would, I'll put my best foot forward and do a full evaluation if needed. If you recall, this past year, we did the
Yeah, we
advisory
talked about
sign.
it, yeah.
And I can treat it like that, I can actually go through the effort. Looking at that picture, I don't believe that's in the MUTCD, which is what we have, so that's.
But whatever is currently available.
So I could see what might be available. Having said that, I would also, one thing I made mention, Franklin, all the other curves that we have.
Yeah.
I don't want to say the can of worms, but imagine if you start doing it for this one, everybody's going to want one, that kind of thing. And then that presents another problem for a driver when you're driving through an area. The constant change in speed limits is just confusing. And then again, we're humans. We've had the discussion, advisory signs really should be minimized, because if they're there, if there's too many, it becomes a sign clutter, and again, people ignore them. So when you do have a real hazard, that's something that people really should be on the lookout for, that then they ignore those signs too. So you try to use them sparingly. It sounds like this one, we did put curb signs in, if I recall right? There are curb signs. So there are warning signs.
There are curb signs for this.
So whether we do curb signs with the speed limit,
I don't recall ever doing them anywhere.
well, and you typically don't unless it's, again, and you typically don't unless it's, again, because it's confusing for they say, aha, it's 15 miles an hour because there's a speed limit sign, right? Well, it's not a speed limit sign, it's advisory. It's just hard to explain. It really doesn't mean anything other than the fact, you should really slow down. So that's the idea. And again, I still go back to the fact. So let me ask you this: when I ask the police for additional enforcement, what is the worst time? Is it when kids get out of school? Is it?
The worst time, without a doubt, is between 2:30 and 4 o'clock. Without a doubt.
o'clock, and I'll
Would you
ask-
like the backing of the board for that request?
Yeah, that would be nice.
Okay?
So make a motion to, so it's
So,
just-
here's what I'm gonna make the suggestion to. I'm gonna let him go back and do, this is what I'm going to ask the board. If it's at the wish of the individuals here. I'm going to ask for a two-part motion. Number one, to table this for a month so that Glenn can do his due diligence on the speed and stop signs of the area, so that we can have the warrants in front of us to evaluate, the whole area from what we just described, Thorncrest through 42nd and 44th.
and next month on the agenda, all that stuff.
Next month. And then the second part of that, I lost my train of thought. Dang.
You want me to look at stop sign warrants? You want me to evaluate
Oh,
the curve?
and the second part of that would be to have the recommendation of this board to go to the police department speed limit at the given times.
So, police department, stop sign warrants for 3 locations, and curve data, and advisory.
Yeah, let's just see where we're actually at and get the data in front of us. Commissioner Speck.
I'd make that motion if I could make a friendly amendment and take that back from Thorncrest to McGinnis.
Can you zoom in on that area for me just a little bit?
I can never find this area the first time. It's right here, right? No?
Yeah.
Right there. Said McGinnis? Which
Yeah.
McGinnis?
Or is it
This is South
Wait,
Lane.
is Cent-
So
no, I
here's-
take that back.
It's south of
That's
Thorncrest
what-
McGinnis
yeah,
right
that's
there.
what-
This is Mc, so
no, I
here's-
take that back.
It's south of
That's
Thorncrest
what- yeah,
McGinnis right
that's
there.
what-
this is McGinnis.
Yeah, right there.
Okay. Thorncrest and McGinnis. So
Yeah,
down-
it would just give a little bit further distance from that intersection, so I take a look at that one also.
So there's 4 intersections. Okay.
Okay,
Now the next street south has a four-way stop.
okay.
Now the next street south has a four-way stop.
Oh, okay, it
Yes,
does.
it does.
All right, so
We'll be
never mind.
stopping
I-
every block. We're gonna put
South
stop
Point?
signs
I-
everywhere. We're gonna have
Yeah,
stop
well,
it.
that's just it. You can't put stop signs at every
No,
place.
no.
But let's
That has-
evaluate
I
where
agree.
it would, if there is a need to put one in, let's figure out. So,
If it's a block away, I renege my friendly amendment, and I will make that motion. As stated.
Slow down. What renege are you, I'm confused.
Pull out.
Keep it
I'm
at
pulling
Thorncrest.
out.
Keep it at Thorncrest.
Keep it at Thorncrest.
Thorncrest to 43 intersections, 44th, 42nd, Thorncrest.
I'm going to try to get this all down. Okay, so we're doing Thorn. Gosh darn it, what did you just do to me?
I like screwing with your thought process.
Good deal.
5 years of it now?
My bioethics just like.
So it's Thorncrest, 42nd, and 44th. I'll correct all of that. So, a two-part motion. One to ask for police enforcement to table the curve request for a full review from 41st and Hilltop, to include Thorncrest, the curve, 42nd, and 44th, to evaluate for December.
Okay.
Okay, and that's made by Commissioner Speck. Okay, and that's made by Commissioner Specht. Is there a second for that motion?
I'll say it.
Commissioner Witt. Is there any other comments? Has everybody got any questions about that? Okay, all of those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any negatives? Not hearing any favor, aye?
Aye.
Any negatives? Not hearing any negatives, we will hear back, and it will be on the agenda in December, unless, of course, Glenn has 4 snowstorms and we gotta deal with the world. That could happen.
Just a comment, I heard the thing about the speed bumps. We had people ask me about why can't they put speed bumps in here? Quote, I'm from Kansas and they put speed bumps all over the place. And they work well.
So,
How's he gonna snowplow the road very good?
Yeah, go ahead, Glenn,
So,
elaborate that.
interesting story, New Berlin actually bought some temporary speed humps. So before they will now put one in, they basically make, basically everyone affected, not just the immediate neighbors, but everyone affected kind of vote whether they want one or not, try one out. So you spend like $20,000 on temporary speed hump tables. It takes almost at least a half a day for them to drill the holes and put them in place. And then they leave it in place for, I forget how long they leave it in place. Then they resurvey the area and ask them, and by and large, everyone says, no, get rid of them, especially people who live right up next to the area and ask them, and by and large, everyone says, no, get rid of them, especially people who live right up next to them. They hate them because you can hear that all day long with the cars. They'd rather hear the meow, no, as opposed to, and,
Remember on 51st Street when last time we paved that road, we put those rumble strips in by just St.
Yes.
Paul's Church going north. The neighbor there did not like that sound.
Yep.
Oh, I remember
and
that.
those are people that aren't staying in the lane, they just veer over a little bit.
Yeah,
He didn't like it, so the city came in. You guys came in, put some asphalt to fill it in. Nobody else cared.
yeah, he came up to this board.
He raised particular hell about that.
He raised
I know.
hell, I remember.
He called me about it.
It sounds like a great idea, just in practice, people hate it, because everybody hates it.
Can I ask you one other question, just
Sure.
on the subject? So New Berlin has this device that can be put in place. Do they rent it out?
Oh, that's a good thought. I've never asked that question.
Well, you know, you know, this might be a perfect example of some place that you can put you know, can we rent this out for $5,000 something from them to put it in and see what the people say about it?
It leaves the pavement in pretty rough shape. I used to live in New Berlin, and
See what the people say about it.
it leaves the pavement in pretty rough shape. I used to live in New Berlin, and they had a couple in a neighborhood nearby us where we used to walk. And
I'm
within a
just-
year, they got rid of them all, but the holes left after
Yeah,
from
you have
the
like
2
50
dozen holes
you have
that
like
they
50
bolted
holes
in.
that they have to.
It just
Yeah,
breaks
they gotta
apart
fix
the
them
road
out.
after
Okay,
a couple
I'm
years.
just, you know, I'm throwing an idea out. Sometimes I think off the wall. Sometimes I think off the wall.
The people at 44th and Oakwood want rumble, or want the speed bumps too.
35th and
Oakwood.
Yeah.
That next
I do have
subdivision
another
down there.
question. She just brought up something that I was curious about. What does the national say about?
I have not explored that option. I mean, you see them a lot, you know, on roadways.
I know some country roads with four-way stops and they're there and they
Yeah,
function well.
I think they do function. They catch your attention.
They wake you up. I think that's what they're concerned about. Is you
they're up on 51st south of Hilltop. And so when you're making the turn off of Hilltop on the 51st, and people that deviate the lane, they wake you up. They
Then,
really do.
You're talking like right in here,
No, on 51st Street as
On
you like get
51st.
into the turn lane.
like right in here.
No, on 51st Street as
On
you like get
51st.
into the turn lane.
For each turn lane, yeah.
then we did rumble strips. The state.
Oh, they're the ones that go down the line.
Yeah.
On
Are
the
you
right.
talking the ones that like are right at stop signs?
I'm talking about the ones that go across the road, like going into a
Oh,
corner.
it's in the center of the
They're in the
road.
middle, like in
So
the
they
middle.
put those at freeway ramps sometimes when
They'll
you're getting.
Center of the
They're in the
road.
middle, like in
So
the
they
middle.
put those
They're
at
in the
freeway
middle.
ramps sometimes when
They'll
you're
put
getting
them on
off.
freeways, and I've seen them on four-way, on big.
I know DOT gets a ton of complaints because those are even noisier than the smaller rumble strips.
Yes, but I'm just saying, you know, it might be another investigative question about,
I'm going to try to, with the paint stripes and the other cheap ways to find out if there's something that'll work, or
is something that will
if
work.
there's not, if they don't work, then we tried it, we know it now, so.
You have
Yeah.
that at least then to follow up with. Because then the other question too, with things like rumble strips and speed bumps, what does that do to our snow
Okay,
plows?
I think we've been,
Actually,
since we're past the thing, I think we're getting into that location.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you for coming in, and I appreciate your
Thank
information.
you for your time.
Yes.
Thank you for your time and listening. Thank you.
Yep. Let's go back to the traffic and drainage, item 4A, the traffic and drainage problems regarding 116th Street.
so last month you tabled it because the gentleman wasn't here, and I think Alderman Nelson wanted him to be here. So
Right.
obviously he's not here again. Having said that, before you table it again, I would suggest maybe tabling again might be appropriate one more time. But I did, as I alluded to earlier, and interesting that, I say interesting, I was one inviter because we're dealing with this all the time, but I want to came over. So basically, setting speed limits for small communities. So out of that, I looked closer at this document, and I've given you all this, so you might keep this in your packet with your normal Board of Public Works. So probably along with the warrants for a stop sign, I would suggest to you setting speed limits on local roads. A lot of good information in here. Again, to you setting speed limits on local roads. A lot of good information in here. Again, I get the highlights of the last agenda item, but bottom line is signs really don't do much. You know, people realize they're speeding and they do it. But if you do want to change them, there are things you have to go through, and it doesn't mean it needs to be done by a PE, but it needs to be done by a knowledgeable person. No offense to elected officials, but that doesn't qualify you to do a speed study. So it could be somebody who's very well qualified, who's familiar with the area, doesn't have to be PE, but someone does have to study it. There are certain reasons why you can lower it, and there are reasons why you can't. If you can't, that really sets you up for a lot of issues and trouble, and it's just a no, you shall not do it. But I wanted to pass this out to you so you had a chance to read it, and again, keep this with your Board of Public Works material. I think that would be appropriate. And then, like I said,
So before you jump off, because we do have the topic of the drainage problems here. We're on that process.
so we haven't touched the drainage issue yet, have we? No, which is quite honestly not the highest on the. We haven't touched the drainage issue yet, have we? No, which is quite honestly not the highest on the.
It's just not a priority right now, and I believe that Alderman Nelson said he wished to have some conversation with the individuals or something, and
Yeah, and
it
that.
hasn't apparently worked, so I'm going to ask for a motion to table that issue at December 2022 meeting.
I'll make the motion.
Is there a second to that
I'll
motion?
second
Commissioner Wozniak. So that motion made by Commissioner Porter, seconded by Commissioner Woznicki. All of those in favor of that motion, aye, will pass. I apologize for cutting you short. We got a little bit off on that conversation after that, and we kind of got, we have to be careful
No, appreciate it.
about meetings. And I don't want to get us into trouble. Okay? So that's why I kind of stopped that.
Well, that's appropriate.
Okay. Again, I'm not trying to, after we signed the thing, I didn't want to get that. Okay, then we're back to the commemorative for Jim Barnecki. This is not the type of thing that this is not the type of thing that I am creative about.
So I'll refresh it. Last month you tabled it. I think the reason, if I recall, was the fact that there wasn't enough of you to really have the conversation. I believe is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement. That's a fair statement.
So for those that weren't here, let me restate the issue is the fact that we do have a policy for renaming something. So like if we want to rename a building or rename something, there is a policy in place for that. The desire was to do something for Jim Barnecki. Put trees up for folks, and we'll put like a little plaque, in memory of kind of thing. If you want to put it in a parks setting, we do have a process. You have to actually go through the Parks Department. I had a conversation with Jack Bennett, who obviously know, and for those of you who weren't here, we feel like it's appropriate to do something because
I believe that's
and was here as an employee, a volunteer with the voting stuff going on, and also sat on this board for many, many years. So basically his service to the city spanned 50 years. It was quite impressive. So that is what would you like to do? Suggestion is that, maybe a tree or something like that, a tree and or something like that, around City Hall might be appropriate. If you leave here, in the back corner, there's a little tree and a bench that have been placed there in the memory of a couple city employees that were here. Maybe something out front, or if you should want a bench or something like that, we can also put a bench there with it. Trees are about $300. I think it's what we charge people for. Benches are about $2,000-ish. If you start talking anything more than tree, we'll probably have to figure out where to find the money from. We just don't have that in our budget. But more than tree, we'll probably have to figure out where to find the money from. We just don't have that in our budget. But for Jim Barnicki, this would probably be. I mean, no offense to the rest of the folks that are serving on the committee. I think Jim probably deserves something maybe a little bit nicer, or, as far as a memorandum. So I believe as far as a memorandum. So. I believe I did call Mrs. Barnicki. She's very amiable to the idea. I think I was asked to do that. She's very amiable to the idea. Thought that'd be a lovely gesture and so forth. So I would suggest maybe whatever you do, whether it be a tree, a bench, or we have some sort of ceremony maybe in the springtime when it's look nice. So that's my spiel.
Commissioner Specht.
Is there anything that Jim was passionate about during his time here?
Fishing.
That's a good question. I asked Jack that question because I thought somebody told me he was very passionate about the trail system. I didn't really get that. I asked Mrs. Barnicki that same question. I didn't really get that she thought something around City Hall would be appropriate, but just the fact that he was around City for so long that might.
Because he was one of the engineers here.
So long that might.
Because he was one of the engineers here, and then he volunteered. Is there a conference room we could rename in his honor?
So that's a good question. There is a conference room with utility building, and we're actually going to name that for Lou. Conference room with utility building, and we're actually going to name that for Lou Grafe, who passed away recently, and as some Grafe Associates, kind of thing. So, but Jim really wasn't part of the utilities as much as he was Public Works. Public Works, we had talked about expanding the building, but I wouldn't lay any money. So a conference room, say City Hall, that might be appropriate. We can make a recommendation. That would have to go to Common Council. There's the hearing room, whether that should be named the Jim Barnicki hearing room or I don't know, the Common Council chambers would be appropriate. Within the past year, like maybe 6 to 9 months ago, they renamed the senior center the Casper Green Senior Center. But for being such a long-time city employee, volunteer, and board member, maybe that would be appropriate. So, inspection room or hearing room or something like that we refer to. Maybe the Jim Barnicki room might be appropriate.
I think you can go two ways on that. I think that, again, this comes to, he was around for an awful long time, like you say. He was around for an awful long time, like you say. And, you have two ways to go on that. You do a room, and it's kind of, okay, it's a room and all of the employees and so forth know who he was, and at least until 20 years from now, and no one will remember, why is this called the Jim Barnicki room? Because no one will know in 25 years who he is.
Right.
But on the other hand, if it's out as a tree, or like you're saying, a tree in a bed, whatever, maybe then maybe then it becomes a, the family members and so forth can come back and say, they'll know who he was in 25 years. That's where I'm coming from.
But it doesn't mean that you also can't put a
Yeah.
plaque up in the room so you can maybe educate.
Which we have at my work. There's some employees that were significant to the operation that passed away during their employment, and they've got some commemorative stuff on their behalf. But even if you had a tree, to put a plaque saying Jim Barnicki tree, and then have some explanation, a long 50-year.
And I apologize for cutting you off. It's just something that came to my mind. You know, we've got the one, you say we got the one tree and bench down here behind the place.
And we may have more, but this
We
is
may
one
have
thing.
more. My point was going to kind of ask the question, would the city consider, do you, small area, and say this is for these types of memorandums for trees to be planted in these areas for people, and they would all be kind of congregated?
Well,
I don't know, I'm just asking the question.
I would suggest to you that. you
Trees
know,
get big, and that maybe that doesn't work. I don't know.
That's one point. You
Trees
know,
get big, and that maybe that doesn't work. I don't know.
That's one point. The other thing is the fact that we like trees everywhere.
Yeah.
You know, some person may have lived over near such and such a park, and that may have been a special place for them.
Yeah.
Or they may have liked walking certain such and such trail.
You almost get like
Yeah.
Memorial Park, if you will.
Walking certain such and such trail.
You almost get like
Yeah.
Memorial Park, if you will, you know, where you have these types of things.
I do recall, so the last, funny you should say it, so the last city I worked in, we had a veterans, basically, we planted a bunch of trees in space. Well, project happened, basically, we planted a bunch of trees in space. Well, project happened, I had to move all the veterans trees to, fortunately, we had Veterans Highway, but then all those trees are now still clumped together, but in a different spot. So, you know, someday if that road should ever widen, which I don't think it would, but if it should, now you gotta relocate all those trees again. So the fact that I like the way we do it here, and the fact that one here, one there, one there, you know, that kind
Okay,
of thing.
I'm just, you know, I don't know where we're at with this.
Room, would that have to go before council?
I would think so, yeah, that would have to go to common council for them. That's what they do with the Casper Green.
And that would be a low cost. There would be virtually no cost other than the cost of a plaque. Would that
Well,
be correct?
plaques are not cheap. In fact, you spend more on a plaque than you can a tree.
Really?
Right, in that fair statement. Like I said, benches are, what we charge $2,000 for the parks?
Depending how much there at the time, can be 1,200 to 2,000.
Yeah, the prices are fluctuating a lot right now. So 1,200 to 2,000, depending on the price when we order it. Trees, I think, are still consistently under $300. Trees, I think, are still consistently under $300. But just a normal little plaque, I mean, it's been several $100s on a plaque.
Do we have a nursery for our own trees in the city of
We
Franklin?
do not.
Okay. That might be something to consider.
We have considered that. We just don't really have a good spot for it.
Commissioner,
Really have a good spot for it.
Commissioner Speck.
Was he into planting at all? What about like a rain garden? Or even a scholarship, if he was involved with a different type of group, you know, like.
So I do know that he and Jack were very involved in American Public Works. You know, and APWA gives, in fact, my interns for the past 2 years have won an APWA scholarship of like $2,000 a year kind of thing. So, if you'd like to make a donation in his memory, that could be something. I don't know that, if, again,
Sidebar at this. Chuck, maybe you've got some, I don't know what your ties anymore are, but, you know, this bench idea or something, or some of these, do we know of anybody coming up in the troop? Do we know of anybody coming up in the troop or in the scouts that would be looking for a project?
Actually, I do.
No.
Well, I don't know. I don't think I can do it for a project though.
Okay.
We had a long discussion at Parks Commission. Well, okay, so if it's not in the parks, it just technically doesn't apply, but we tend to have a problem with people building, just technically doesn't apply, but we tend to have a problem with people building all different kinds of things for the parks, and then when they go bad, how do you repair them, how do you replace them, and
Okay.
so we're trying to standardize everything, but,
Okay.
sorry.
Just thought I'd ask the
No, it's a
question.
good question.
It is. It was a good thought, but in favor, either is a good idea. I think, you know, the tree to me is a very durable thing. You know, I mean, buildings can be remodeled and areas can be repurposed and changed, you know, and sometimes then, you know, then what do you do with that room that you had dedicated house, and what are you going to do? Whereas I think trees are very durable, you know, and could potentially live for hundreds of years, you know. I don't know.
Is there any location down at the Public Works garage where a tree could be?
The future firehouse and future buildings, I wouldn't wanna.
Okay.
I would suggest to you
I'm
that
just throwing out.
you already have enough
Yeah,
street,
you could want that.
you have enough street trees out in front. I don't think another one could be fit there.
Okay.
I mean, you know, this area here around City Hall, library, that type of stuff, appropriate location, because it's more or less the city center. What we're trying to establish is a city center.
Yeah, without actually going out and looking, I would think somewhere like visible from the front entrance might be appropriate. That's up to you.
You know, I could do without the bench per se, you know, I mean, the bench per se, you know, I mean, you just don't want to plunk a bench by a tree out in the middle of nowhere. It wouldn't necessarily make any sense. And it just adds cost, you know, but I think a tree with a plaque adjacent to it or by it, you know, we'd have to make sure that it didn't get destroyed by somebody, you know, we'd have to make sure that it didn't get destroyed by somebody or whatever.
Would you like to make a motion to recommend the staff to evaluate a location for putting such a tree in a plot around the city center area?
Do we want to decide what kind of tree too? The reason I ask that is because the tree type has a lot to do with its location.
Yeah, so we do have an arborist on staff, and he's very good about saying, you know, because of the soils, I would have this tree or that tree, or just FYI, we're not putting more maples up for a long time. We have too many maples. We're trying to decide on the maples, so we're trying to find other kinds of trees to do. So, no, I would trust Tom to give us a recommendation on location and species.
Well, could we have that as a motion then, or make a motion like that?
Well, go ahead and, go ahead and restate what I said, because I don't remember what I said.
I don't remember what you said either, but maybe have.
So unless you really want to come back and make another decision, one motion you might say is just instruct staff to plant a tree and coordinate a ceremony with the family in the springtime around City Hall as appropriate for location and species.
Yeah.
Okay. Hall as appropriate for location and species.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, that would be good. You're not happy with maples anymore, huh?
Well, it's not that we're not happy with them, but then when the, say, maple wilt comes through, it's, you know, like right now we have all the, say, maple wilt comes through, it's, you know, like right now we have all the emerald ash borer.
Right.
And when
Wiped
you're
out
older,
all the ash trees.
and you would have thought we would have learned our lessons from the time before when we had the, what was the big one? Huh?
Dutch elm disease.
Yeah, the Dutch elm disease. So we had something come through, wiped out whole species of trees. Elm disease. So we had something come through, wiped out whole species of trees, which pretty much decimated everything. We didn't learn our lesson, and we put back emerald or ash borers.
So then, would this motion? Then the staff would then take it forward to council for approval?
So I would suggest to you that a tree and a plaque is something we can do without going to common council.
Okay.
I'll find out. If I need to, I'll take it, but I don't think we will. I'll check. I'll check with someone.
I'll get something in here wording it wise, but the motion is to instruct staff to plant a tree with a plaque recognizing Jim Bartdecki somewhere on the city center property, and
I'd say center, maybe library too. We'll find
yeah,
out.
city center property and coordinate a time in the spring for a dedication service with the family members.
Yes.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
So Commissioner Porter, seconded by Commissioner Wozniacki. And I'll clearly clean that up a little bit. Is there any other discussion from anybody on that? Okay, all those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Any negatives? I'm not hearing any negatives. That motion will pass. And then we're gonna move on to, I did not put it, okay? And then, it is.
Second Tuesday. You said Thursday.
Thank you, sir. This second Tuesday. It is 7:11. Do I have a motion to adjourn?